Okay. Alright, so we're having a look at decimals and percentages and fractions. Okay, so decimals, percentages, and fractions. Alright, here we go. So we've already had a look at addition and subtraction of decimals, so they shouldn't be too hard. All you got to do, if I give it a recap, 6.256, and if you want to plus that to 2.34. Well, as you can see, when you write it underneath each other, you should write them in the same amount of decimal places. Okay, so if this had 3 decimal places, you probably want to write 3 decimal places. It just makes it easier for you to see. Alright, and then as always, you just got to add now. 6 plus 0 is 6, 5 plus 4 is 9, 2 plus 3 is 5, decimal, 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 6 plus 2 is 8. Okay, nice and easy. And then subtraction works the same way, but we're not going to look at that. You can look at your previous examples for that. Alright, what we're going to have a look at now is actually multiplication of decimals. Okay, multiplication of decimals. So if we've got 2.6 times by 5, 2.6 times by 5, what's an easy way of doing that? Well, yeah?
Times by 6, and then you put the decimal. Alright,
so we're going to learn 2 ways of doing multiplication by decimals of decimals. So let's get a different color. So I'll go method 1. Okay, method 1. So if we had a number that said 2.6 times by 5. Alright, what we should do is go 6 times 5. So 6 times 5 is 30, right? And then what we're usually looking at is this first number here is going to get added to this, and this number here is going to be our decimal place. Okay, so when you see 30, that 3 is going to go up here, and then that 0 is going to be on the side after the decimal place. So you would do 5 times 6, like I said, that's 30. Now you do 5 times 2, that's 5 times 2 is 10, and then you've got a 3 there still on top, right? So 10 plus 3 is 13, and then 0.0. Now, I feel like that's tricky. We'll do another one exactly the same. Let's do 3.01 times by 5. Okay, so what I should do is 5 times 1. We're going to do it this way. Or we're going to learn this second method. Now, my second method is nice and easy. What you want to do is not use decimals at all. Okay, because decimals are usually being pretty hard. So, whole number. So, by making it into a whole number, we've got to move it 2 decimal places. Can you see that? I'm going to move it 1 decimal place, 2 decimal places there. So, I'm going to get the number 301. Moved 2 decimal places. Yep. So, I've got 301. I'm just going to times that by 5. And that's all you do. So 5 times 1 is 5, 5 times 0 is 0, 5 times 3 is 15, okay? So we've got the number like this now, 1505. But because I've moved 2 decimal places, I'm going to move back 2 decimal places as well. And then you go 1, 2. 15.05 is your answer. Okay, well, let's do that again. And I think that's shown to me that's been easier for a lot of students. So 2.6 times 0.5. Okay, so what you should do, if you know what 2.6 times half is, well, fantastic, it just should be 1.3. But if you couldn't do it as quick as I can, then what we'll rather do is move this 1 decimal place. You're going to move this also 1 decimal place. So how many decimal places have you moved so far?
1.
But you've moved them twice, because that's been once, and that's also been once. So you've moved 2 decimal places altogether. Because remember, you want to make both into whole numbers. You get that? You want to make both of them into whole numbers. Make sense? So if I'm going to make this into a whole number, then that becomes 26 times by what number?
50.
But I'm just moving it one decimal place. Yeah, 5. Cool? Okay, 5. 5 times 6 is 30, 0, 3, 5 times 2 is 10, 10 plus 3 is 13. Then, because you moved 2 decimal places, you're going to move back 2 decimal places. So that goes 1, 2, so your answer is 1.3 or 1.30. Doesn't make a difference. That's it. And that's what you're... Okay. Where was I? So, let's go do another one. What question was that? 3. Question 4. How about if we had 3.01 times by 0.3? Well, okay. How many decimal places do I have to move this one?
2.
2 decimal places to make it into a whole number, because then it becomes 301, right?
Yeah.
And then how many decimal places do I have to move this one?
1.
1. What's 2 plus 1?
2 plus 1 is 3.
3 decimal places. So then now you know when you do your final answer, you have to go back 3 decimal places. 301 times by 3. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times 0 is 0. 3 times 3 is 9. So we have 903. We have to go back 3 decimal places. So we start here. We go back 1, 2, 3. So what do I put here if there's nothing? 0. So my final answer is 0.903. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go again. Until we get it fully. How about if I did 1.256 times by 0.027? Okay, how many decimal places am I moving for the first one now?
3.
3. And then how about the other one?
3.
Also 3. 1, 2, 3. What's my number that's going to become from this one? 1,256. What's my number here?
27.
27. So a little bit of a trickier multiplication, but doesn't matter. 7 times 6 is... And then how many decimal places have I gone altogether, first of all?
6.
So just keep that into mind. Alright, I'm just going to shorten it. It's decimal dot places. Cool, decimal places. 7 times 6, 42. 2, carry the 4. 7 times 5, 35. 35 plus 4 is 39. 9, 3. 7 times 2 is 14. 14 plus 3 is 17. 7, 1. 7 times 1 is 7. Plus another 1 is 8. Before we move on to the second number, we always write a 0. 2 times 6 is 12. 2. And then you write a 1. 2 times 5 is 10. 10 plus 1 is 11. 1, 1. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 plus 1 is 5. 2 times 1 is
2.
2. 9 plus 2 is 11. 1, 1. 7, 8, 9. 8 plus 5 is 13. 3 and a 1. And then you got your 3. Now, that's our big number. We got to go back 6 decimal places. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
So 0 after the decimal and behind the decimal?
Yeah, so like that.
Yeah.
That's it. Good job. Okay, let's have a look at trickier questions now. What about if we look at it through indices? Okay, so number 6. What if I gave you this? So these are challenge questions. Challenge. What if I gave you 0.2 to the power of 3? 0.2 to the power of 3. Well, what does to the power of 3 mean? It means 0.2 times 0.2 times 0.2. So that's okay for us now though. You know why? Because we learned a nice, easy method. We learned that we can just go make this into a whole number, move it 1 decimal place, 1 decimal place, 1 decimal place, 1, 1, 1 equals 3 decimal places, right? Then that whole number is 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times 2 times 2 is?
6.
2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is
8.
8. And then we're going to move back how many decimal places though?
3.
3. So let me write it here. 8. We're going to move back 3. 1, 2, 3, and then put a decimal. So that's a 0, 0, and a 0. So your answer equals to 0.008. Let's go do it again. Another challenge. How about if I gave you 0.8 to the power of 4? Okay, that means 0.8 times
0.8.
0.8 times
0.8.
how many times?
4.
4 times. That's it. That's what the power means. 0.8 times 0.8 times 0.8 times 0.8. It does not mean 4 times 0.8. Okay, careful. That's very wrong. Wrong. Okay, well, again, should be easy for us. Here we go. 1 decimal place, 1 decimal place, 1 decimal place, 1 decimal place. 8 times 8 times 8 times 8. Maybe a bit of a trickier one. Okay? 8 times 8 times 8 times 8, but we're going to move it back 4 decimal places. Okay, what's 8 times 8?
64.
So we're going to do 64 times by 8. Or 64 times by 64. Can you see that? That will save us the time of doing it twice. So we want to just do 64 times 64. That's 64 times,
64.
and then 64. And then that should give us our final answer. Cool? Alright, here we go. 64 times 64. 4 times 4 is 16. 6, 1. 6 times 4 is 24. Plus 1 is 25. Yep. 0. And then same answer, right? 2, 6, 5, 2. It's exactly the same. And that becomes, I'll write it up here because I'm running out of space. So it's going to become 6, 11. So 1, and then I'm going to carry the 1 over. 2 plus 5 is 7. Plus another 1 is 8. And then 2. So 2816. I'm going to go back 4 decimal places. 1, 2, 3. That's it. 0.2816. Alright, let's have a look at even more decimal places. So what number are we up to? Number 8. What if I wrote 0.001 to the power of 3? Ooh, okay, so that means that's 0.001 times 0.001 times by 0.001. Okay, but when I move decimal places, so it looks hard at the moment, okay, just give it some time. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So once you know that's 3, 3, and 3, you're going to move it back 9 decimal places. Okay, the actual whole number is 1 times 1 times,
1.
which equals to 1, right? But you're going to move it back 9 decimal places. So that's going to be the fun part. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, and then obviously 0 before. If I've done it right, there should be 9 numbers after the decimal place. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay? It looks tricky. You might miss up with the zeros, but you see how slowly I did it? 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay, let's have a look now at multiplication. And division by 10, 100, 1000, etc. Okay? So that should be the next page for you guys. Alright, so multiplication and division by 10, 100, and 1000. So it's not hard at all. In fact, it's easier than what we were just looking up above. If I do 1.6 times 10, it's trying to say that, okay, when we times, let's understand something. Before anything, let me write something. When we timesing, we're going to move to the right. Move to the right. When we're dividing, the decimal will move to the, move to the left. Okay? And then the zeros tell us how many times to move. The zeros in 10, 100, 1000, etc. Tell us how many to move. Okay? So if I gave you 1.6 times 10, which is what I had before, I know times, I move to the right, so I'm going to move my decimal place to the right. Okay? And I'm going to move it by how many decimal places? Just one, because it's got a 1, 0. So 1.6, I move it to the right, becomes 16. Easy?
Yeah.
If I gave you 0.0252 and I said times it by 100, well, how many places do I move? 2, because there's 2 zeros, and I'm going to move to the right, because obviously it's times. So here we go. We're going to go 1, 2. So my decimal's there now. My answer is 2.52. See how I ignored the zeros before? Because you can write it, but it'll look like this. Now, these zeros are not going to do nothing. So we tend to ignore it, okay? So 2.52 is your answer. Let's have a look at another one. 0.00038 times by 1,000. Or let's do by 10,000. So how many decimal places should I move? 4 decimal places. And then am I going to the right or to the left?
To the left.
No, I'm timesing. I go to the right. Alright, there's only 2 checks you got to ever do, as you're seeing, guys. I'm checking how many decimal places am I going to be moving. Alright, and then is it to the left or is it to the right?
To the right.
That's it. I'm just saying, those are the checks that we're doing. Okay, so we start here. We're going to move 4 decimal places to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4. My answer is 3.8. Okay, what about if we're dividing? So now, the good thing with dividing, the same decimal places trick works. However, if we're dividing, we're going to go to the left now. We're not going to go to the right. We're going to the left. So let's use a different color to do these questions. All right. If we're going to the left, that means we're going to move how many decimal places to the left? 1 decimal place. So we're going to move it here. So what do we write if we see no number before it then? We imagine a 0.36. Good job. Let's go again. Let's go with 104 divided by 100. How many decimal places am I going to move? 2. To the left or to the right?
To the left.
To the left, because it's divide. Now, where's my decimal place? I don't see a decimal place here.
You start.
You always start at the end, because that's where our decimal places should be. Imagine money. You're $20, right? If you're $20, if your decimal place for $20 is 0.00, and there's your point right at the end of that 0. Okay. All right. So we're going to start here. We're going to go back 2 decimal places. 1, 2. My answer is 1.04. Let's go with a tricky one just to end it. Let's go with 0.026, and we're going to divide that by 100. So where do I start? Do I start at the end here, or do I start at the decimal? You always start at the decimal. If there is no decimal, then you're going to start at the end, because that's where the decimal is. All right, we start off and we go down back to 1, 2. That's my decimal. That means there's meant to be imaginary 0 there. The 0 is already taken care of here, so it's going to be 0 point and then 0.0026. Any questions? All right. Let's have a look at division by a whole number. So division now of decimals, but by a whole number. Division by a whole number. Now, this should be pretty straightforward for most of you guys, but nevertheless, we're going to cover it. So if the question was 34.56 divided by 2, obviously that's how we write it. We should know that by now. That's the same as writing it like this. Okay, we write it differently. So 34.56 divided by 2. Now, not hard at all. As long as your point must be under your point. All right, so this point here must be under your point. So it's like a pup. Point under point. Easy? Pup. Just like a puppy. Cool. How many times does 2 go into 3?
One.
Once. Remainder 1. 2 into 14 is 7. No remainder. But now you've got a decimal. You put the decimal there. How many times does 2 go into 5? Twice. Remainder 1. How many times does 2 go into 16? 8 times, and you're done. Let's go another one. Let's go with 84.06 divided by 8. How many times does 8 go into 8? Once. How many times does 8 go into 4? You can't do, but you put the decimal there and you got to carry the 4 over. So there's a couple of things that were happening there, right? Be careful. How many times does 8 go into 40?
5.
5 exact times. How many times does 8 go into 6?
You can't.
That means 0, and you got to have a remainder of?
6.
That's it. Easy? Good. Now we're going to look at division by a decimal. So I should write here division by whole number. And then here's going to be a division by a decimal. Okay. So imagine you had this. You had 6.20 and you want to divide it by 0.05. Might be a tricky one, okay? Because you don't know, do I put 0 into 6? Do I put 0 into 6? Or do I put the 5 into 6? What's happening exactly? It's too hard, so I don't do it like that. Okay? You want to make it into a whole number. Just like the way we did times. Alright, when we did multiplication, whole number. Make sense? Alright, well if it's a whole number, then how many decimal places are you going to move there? 2 decimal places. How about here?
2.
Another 2. So how many decimal places have you moved altogether?
4.
But we don't care this time. The reason why we don't care about the 4 decimal places is because when we're dividing, now let me show you, when we're dividing, we're going to write 2 decimal places on top that we've moved over 2 decimal places on top that on the bottom that we've moved. They're actually going to cancel each other out. Okay? So with division, you don't even have to move back. When you just make it into a whole number, then you can just divide normally. That's it. That is it, really as easy as that is. So here we go. 5, and that becomes 620. Oh, but the important thing is they both have to move the same amount of times. So this has to be the same as this. Okay? You can't move one decimal place and move the other one 2 decimal places. So they both. So you see, if I had this question, if I had this, you see how I'll be moving this twice, but then you'll be like, oh, I only need to move this once. Wrong. You have to match the highest one. So if you're moving this twice, you have to move this also twice. That's the trick. And the reason why you got to do that, because of this. So then they cancel out. Okay? Because if it was 2 over 1, well then you're not going to cancel out. That's going to be equal to 2 still. Okay? Alright, so how many times does 5 go into 6? 1, remainder 1. 5 into 12. Twice, remainder 2. 5 into 20 is 4. That's it. Your answer is 124. And if you try that, guys, on your calculator, 6.20 divided by 0.05, it's actually going to give you 124. Sounds weird because you're thinking you're dividing, you get a small number. But a small number divided by a small number is actually a bigger number. Okay? And we'll learn that more when we learn fraction, because you know when we divide, we actually times by its reciprocal. So that's why it gets bigger. But anyways, let's try another one. How about we try 32.04, and we're going to divide that by 0.4. Okay, well, what did I just say? You want to match the number of decimal places. So maybe I should put that up here as well. Match the decimal places. Okay? Alright, so how many times am I going to be moving this one?
2.
Wait, but how many times does it look like it?
1.
1. This looks like once. This looks, how many times am I going to move this?
2.
Twice. Now because I'm moving this twice, but moving this once, it's not going to work out. So how many times do I have to really move this?
Twice.
Yeah, so I've got to move this 2 decimal places and these 2 decimal places so they can match the maximum number of decimal places. And then you just write the numbers out and you divide. So this move it 2 decimal places is actually, sorry, 1, 2. So it's going to become 40. All right, and that's going to become 3,204. How many times does 40 go into 3?
You can't.
You can't do. So that's 0. How many times does 40 go into 32? You can't do. How many times does 40 go into 320? Well, what's 4 times what gives you 32? Because the 0 shouldn't scare you.
8.
Yeah, see? And 40 times 8 is actually 320. How many does 40 go into 4?
You can't do that.
You can't do. And then, so that's 0, sorry, my bad. You don't put a decimal, you write 0, right? And then you got your decimal. What am I doing?
Remainder.
And then you got your remainder of
4.
4. Okay? 4 remainder 4. Now, what if I want to write my remainder as a fraction or as a decimal? So, if you guys remember, the way we'd write this is 80, and then your remainder is as a fraction of 40. So it's going to be 4 over 40, right? Which can get simplified to 1 over 10, because 4 into 40 is 1 over 10, right? So that's 80 and 1/10, or as a decimal, should be 80, and then you guys should know 1 over 10 is equal to 0.1, so 80.1. Cool? So you should know how to write different types of remainders. That's also a remainder, that's a remainder, that's a remainder in fraction form, that's a remainder in decimal form, that's a remainder in standard form. Okay? So we're going to do a couple that way as well. Okay. Alright, here we go. 0.002, and then I wanted that to be divided from 0.3847. Okay, how many decimal places am I going to move this? 3 decimal places, but then how many am I going to move this?
4.
Well, that's wrong then. How many times do I need to move this one? 4 times, so that's going to become 20. That's going to become 3847. How many times does 20 go into 3? 0. 20 into 38? Once. Remainder of 18. How many does 20 go into 184? Well, we know that 20 times 8 is 160. We know that 20 times 9 is 180. So it should be 9 remainder of 4. And then 20 into 47 is twice. Remainder 7. What's another way we can write that? 192 and as a fraction? No, as a fraction? 7 over 20. 7 over 20, right? 7 out of 20. Cool?
Yeah.
And then how do you write that as a decimal? Well, we need to make this into a out of 100, because that's usually the easiest way to make these into decimals. So you can see if I times by 5, it's going to become 35 over 100.
Yeah.
So it's 0.35. Therefore, that should be 192.35 as well.
So how come